For almost 100 years now, there's been this huge debate about Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. Was it the thing that saved American capitalism? Or was it a massive government overreach? Today, we're going to unpack that really complex legacy, kind of like a balanced scorecard. All right, let's get into it. So let's start with the big question, right? Was the New Deal a success or was it a failure? And what you're going to find out is that the answer, well, it's not simple at all. It's really this messy mix of both, and it all comes down to how you're measuring it. So first up on our scorecard, let's talk politics. We're talking about the New Deal's massive, and I mean massive, political impact. And honestly, this is the one area where you can't really argue with its success. I mean, just look at this map. This is a landslide. FDR won basically everywhere except Maine and Vermont. And this wasn't just, a big win. No, this was a complete shakeup of American politics. He pulled together this brand new coalition. Think about it. The South, the West, city folks, unions, ethnic groups, and for the very first time, a majority of Black voters, all voting Democrat. This group, they ran the show for the next 30 years. So you can imagine, after a win like that, FDR must have felt like he was on top of the world. He had the people behind him. He seemed totally unstoppable. But there was one major obstacle in his way, one institution that was supposed to be above politics. And that was the Supreme Court. And let me tell you, the court in the 1930s, they were not fans of the New Deal. You've got these 9 justices, and 4 of them, these really staunch conservatives, were just shooting down his key programs one after another. We're talking big ones like the National Recovery Administration and the Agricultural Adjustment Act. And get this, one of the justices, a guy named Willis Van Devanter, apparently disliked FDR so much personally that he put off retiring just so he could keep blocking him. So what does FDR do? Well, he comes up with this really controversial plan. It gets called court packing. Basically, he proposed a law that would let him add a new justice for every current justice over the age of 70. I mean, it was a pretty obvious power grab, right? And it totally backfired. The Senate wasn't having it. Even the court pushed back. The whole crisis kind of fizzled out when the court, maybe feeling the heat, started to change its tune and began approving New Deal laws. And then that justice, Van Devanter, finally retired, and FDR got to appoint a new justice anyway, without his new law. But here's the thing, the damage was done. Yeah, FDR ended up getting a court that was more friendly to his ideas, but the fight to get there cost him a lot. He really burned some bridges with Congress, and by 1938, all that momentum the New Deal had, it just stalled out. You could say he won the battle, but in the long run, it might have cost him the war for any more big reforms. Okay, so that's the political side. Let's move on to our next category, the social impact. And this is where the story gets really complicated, because you've got this incredible revolutionary change happening, but at the same time, it was seriously flawed. Socially, the New Deal was an absolute game changer. I mean, think about it. For the first time ever, the federal government was creating a real social safety net. You've got the Social Security Act helping out the elderly and disabled, the Wagner Act, which gave a huge boost to labor unions, and the Fair Labor Standards Act, which gave us things we just assume are normal now, like a minimum wage. But, and this is a really big but, there was a dark side to all this. This quote from the NAACP at the time just says it all. You see, to get these landmark bills passed, FDR had to make deals with powerful Southern Democrats. And what did that mean? Well, it meant that programs like Social Security were specifically designed to leave out domestic and agricultural workers, which of course were jobs held mostly by African Americans. This really breaks down that divide pretty clearly. You've got your winners, organized labor got a huge leg up, and places like the South and West saw massive investment in things like dams and roads. But then you have the people who were largely left behind. Women often got paid less for the same job, and it was legal. African Americans were the last hired, first fired. And for Mexican Americans, the situation was often even worse. Many faced deportation and got almost none of the benefits. So you might be wondering, why would these groups who were left out still vote for FDR? Well, this quote really sums it up. The New Deal wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. But for millions of people, it was so much better than the alternative, which was literally nothing. Hoover's breadlines. So these programs, they were a lifeline. A flawed one, for sure, but a lifeline all the same. All right, that brings us to our third and final piece of the puzzle, the economy. And if you thought the social side was complicated, just wait. The economic story is a real roller coaster. Okay, so let's follow the numbers on this chart. FDR comes into office right here, 1933, and unemployment is through the roof. His programs get going, and you see the numbers start to drop pretty steadily for a few years. But then, look what happens in 1938. FDR gets nervous about all the government spending, so he pulls back a bit, and boom, unemployment shoots right back up. They even called it the Roosevelt recession. And what finally makes the number really dive down? Well, that's the massive spending that came along with World War II. And this single number right here, it tells you so much. 10 million. After 6 straight years of the New Deal, in 1939, 10 million Americans were still unemployed. Now, sure, that's better than the peak of 12 million, but it tells you one crucial thing. The Great Depression was nowhere near over. So, at the end of the day, what most economists agree on is this. The New Deal was amazing at providing relief. It kept people from starving, it helped them stay in their homes. But what it wasn't successful at was recovery. It didn't actually end the Great Depression. Only the war did that. All right, so we've covered the politics, the social changes, and the economy. So let's bring it all home. What's the final verdict on the New Deal's legacy? Politically, it was a total home run. No question. FDR built a political machine that basically ran the country for 30 years and changed the game completely. Socially, you've got to call it a flawed revolution. It was revolutionary, for sure. It created this idea of a government safety net, but that net had huge holes in it, built on a foundation of inequality that left out millions of the people who needed it most. And economically, let's call it a partial fix. It was like a giant bandage. It stopped the bleeding and eased a ton of suffering, but it didn't heal the wound. It never actually fixed the Great Depression. Which brings us right back to the big question, the one historians are still arguing about. Was the New Deal a fundamentally flawed system that cemented inequality into American life? Or was it the imperfect, messy, but absolutely necessary framework that saved the entire system, democracy, capitalism, the whole shebang, from totally collapsing? That's the real legacy. And the answer, well, it's one we're still figuring out today.